She stormed up to our porch like she owned the whole street, waving a bright yellow paper in her hand. And before I could even say a word, she shouted so loud that neighbors peeked through their curtains like scared cats in the night. And my wife, Emily, did not even blink as Karen screamed, "You think you can just ignore this? Fine." And I could see the paper shaking in her hand, as if she thought it gave her power, but Emily calmly folded it with the patience of a lioness and said, "We are not paying a fake fine for a rule you made up yesterday." And the look on Karen as face turned red like fire as she snapped, "This is an official HOA notice, and if you don't pay, we will make sure you regret it." And before I could say anything, she spun around, shouting into her phone, "I'm calling the cops," and the sound of her heels on the concrete echoed like war drums in the street. And I stepped outside, trying to keep my cool, and said, "Emily, maybe we should just," but she cut me off sharply and said, "No, it is not about the money. It is about her thinking she can bully everyone." And I knew from her voice that this was not going to end with silence. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, the sound of sirens filled the street, and a police car rolled up slow and steady with 2 officers. Stepping out as if they had walked into a movie scene, Karen ran toward them, dramatically pointing at our house like she had just uncovered a terrorist cell, and shouted, "That is them arrest them now." They refused to pay their fine, and they threatened me, and my heart started pounding because the way she said it made it sound like we were criminals. But the younger officer nodded seriously and walked toward us while the older one scanned the scene quietly, and the younger one said, "Sir Ma, and we got a call about a disturbance. We need to sort this out." And Emily folded her arms and said, "Disturbance? We have been standing on our porch. She is the one causing a scene." And Karen shoved past him, screaming, "Dante, listen to her lies. Just arrest them already." But then something strange happened, because the older officer stopped mid-step, his sharp eyes locked on Emily, and suddenly his face changed like he had seen a ghost, and he whispered, "Wait," and his voice trembled slightly, "Judge it." And the whole street went silent. Even Karen froze, as if her body forgot how to breathe. And Emily raised an eyebrow and said calmly, "Hello, Officer Daniels, it has been a while," and my jaw dropped because, "Judge, what did he mean?" Karen blinked, confused and furious, shouting, "Judge, what are you talking about? She is just some nobody breaking HOA rules." But Daniels turned his gaze to Karen with an icy tone and said, "Ma, you better explain yourself very carefully right now." And Emily just stood calm like a queen, waiting for her servant to speak, and for the first time, I saw Karen as confidence crack as she stammered, "Well, what do you mean she is lying? She is just trying to get out of paying her fine." But Daniel stepped forward, hand resting lightly on his holster, and said, "Ma, I suggest you take a step back." And Karen shouted, "No, she threatened me. She is defying HOA rules, and you need to do your job." But when she looked at the younger cop for backup, his eyes were shifting nervously between his partner and Emily finally spoke, saying, "Karen, you really should stop digging this hole, because you already crossed more lines than you realize." And Karen laughed bitterly, saying, "Oh, please, you think you can scare me with big words? This is my neighborhood, and I decide what happens here." But then Daniels asked Emily, "Is there any proof of what happened before we arrived? Cameras, witnesses, anything?" And Emily smiled faintly and said, "Of course," and she tapped her phone, pulling up a live security feed, and handed it to Daniels. The video showed Karen trespassing, ripping our garden flag, and leaving a fake notice on our door, and as it played, Karen's face drained of color, and she stuttered, "That is not real. She edited it. She is framing me." But the younger officer frowned and said, "Ma, this clearly shows you stepping onto their property," and Emily's voice cut clean as glass, saying, "And it also shows her threatening to tow our car and bragging about her connections. So Karen, why don't you explain who those connections are?" And Karen's lips pressed tight as fear flickered in her eyes, but she stayed silent, and Daniels turned back to Emily, saying, "Judge, I did not know you lived here." And Emily corrected, softly retired. I wanted a quiet life, but people like Karen make it difficult, and Karen's eyes went wide. Retired judge. Her no, this is not fair. She is using her old job to scare you. But Emily shook her head and said, or maybe you have been abusing power so long you never imagined someone would stand against you. And Karen started breathing fast and shouted, "You don't know who you are messing with." And Emily turned to Daniels and said, "Tell her." "Daniels, tell her who is in real trouble." And Daniels stepped forward, eyes sharp, and said, "Karen, impersonating government authority is a serious crime. These fake fines, these fake citations, that is fraud." The younger officer pulled out his cuffs and said, "Ma, you are under arrest." And Karen stumbled back, screaming, "What? No, you can't arrest me. I am the HOA." And Emily gave a sharp smile and said, "Not anymore." But then a black SUV screeched to a halt at the end of the street, and a tall man in a dark suit jumped out, storming toward us, shouting, "Nobody touches her. This is a misunderstanding." And his presence made the younger officer hesitate as he flashed a badge. Too quickly to see, but his voice carried authority, saying, "This woman is under my protection. Step away from her." And Karen's fear turned instantly smug as she hissed, "See, I told you I have connections." But Emily stayed calm and said, "Oh, I believe you, but the real question is, does he know what he is walking into?" And the man sneered, saying, "Lady, you know who you are dealing with." And Emily tilted her head softly, saying, "Neither do you." And Daniels stepped in between, demanding, "Sir, show proper identification." And the man slowly raised the badge again, saying, "Federal Property Oversight Division. Karen works with us. This is our jurisdiction." And the younger officer whispered, confused, "Federal? I didn't even know that existed." And Emily's tone cut sharp, "There is no such division. That badge is fake, just like the fake fines and the fake HOA." Karen's smug smile collapsed as she stammered, "No, it is real." But before he could defend her, Emily tapped her phone again, and the footage switched to another clip from a hidden mailbox camera, and it showed the same man carrying blank official notices and saying, "Spread these around. Scare the neighbors into paying. The more fines we collect, the better." And silence fell across the street as even the wind seemed to stop. And Daniel's jaw tightened as he said, "That is evidence of organized fraud." And he stepped forward, saying, "Sir, you are under arrest." But the man lunged, grabbing Karen, and shouted, "Run!" And they bolted for the SUV, with the younger officer sprinting after them. But the man shoved Karen inside and jumped into the driver's seat, and the tires screamed as they sped off. I turned to Emily, confused, saying, "How could you know they would not get far?" And for the first time, her calm mask cracked just slightly as she said, "Because I have been tracking them for weeks. This was never about a fine or even the HOA. It is bigger than that." And Daniel stared at her, shocked, saying, "Tracking them, Judge, you are retired. How do you even know these people?" And Emily's voice dropped low as she said, "They targeted the wrong family." And then she looked at me with steel in her eyes and said, "You see, I was not just a judge before that. I worked with federal prosecutors to take down fraud rings, just like this one." And Daniel said, "You mean this is not their first scam?" And Emily nodded grimly, saying, "Far from it. They have been running this across 3 states, and now, with this evidence, we have everything to bring them down." And in that moment, I realized this was only the beginning.